Mhm. All right. Welcome everyone to Shay Toddcast. Um, we we are back, and this week we have an amazing guest. One of my longtime friends in the industry, straight out of Chicago, via Todd's basement this weekend. Josh Blaylock of Devil's Due Entertainment slash Publishing slash Comics slash whatever you want to call it now. I don't know which iteration we're on. I lose
Studios.
track.
Full circle. It's back to studios.
Studios, back to the way it was. Awesome. Some of you guys may remember Josh from the 2019 Three Rivers Comic Con when he did the Mercy Sparks beer, the Sinful Stout, which is still one of my favorite arts, because it's just so clean and so, yep, there it is. It's very clean. It's very concise. I like the bright yellow background. It made it worth it. It made it very pop, like to me. Um, and those cans are very limited anymore. Um, but I enjoy it. I'm sure Todd's giving you a bunch to take home, so it's good. So, how
Yeah.
was your day in the
No
warehouse?
accident that was set next to the computer here.
Oh, got it. How was your day up in the warehouse today? Because you came to visit for business. You're not just here to hang out.
Yeah, yeah. We as from time to time we publishers sell stock at massive volumes to certain retailers and yeah, uh I was there sorting through boxes and finding lots of surprises. You accumulate this inventory over years and you end up, if you're using third-party warehouses, stuff is supposedly sold out or gone, and then you can find years later you find like, oh, wow, look what we have here. It's a box full of this thing that doesn't exist anymore. So that was interesting. And
Hmm?
yeah, I saw the massive yet another massive New Dimension facility with 8
Yeah,
million comics inside or
it's a
somewhere to that.
it's a madman with a warehouse, as I like to call him.
Yeah.
He's our personal Doctor Who. So, um, yeah. And actually, I think the first time I met you was at one of your old warehouses. We were going out to AC Games Day in Madison, and Todd talked us into not only muling a crap ton of beer back, um, we then had to stop at your warehouse on the way back and buy a bunch of stuff and then drive it back to Pittsburgh. And um, first off, I need to tell you guys that the van we took was only a two-seater and an empty back. So we actually had like fastened like a lawn chair to the side, which made it very fun when you're trying to sleep and it's
Oh my
just like
God.
sliding and you're like, oh God, we're gonna die. Um, so then on the way back, because we bought so much stuff from you, we just built a throne in the boxes, and that's where we sat. It was a good time. It was a fun trip. I just remember that warehouse being like super old, like you could see through the floor down to the next layer. Oh man,
On part of it, yeah, it was
nuts.
some old 1800s like Chicago former factory or something.
Yeah, yeah, it was
Yeah,
nuts.
no.
Like the freaking trains were like flying right like outside. I was just like, oh
Oh yeah,
crap.
yeah, that's right.
That's
Yeah, it's right. It was right next to the Green Line, and then
yeah.
yeah, I had shit, man, thousands of books stored there.
Hmm.
I had there were several people that had things stored because it was all mutual friends of the guy that owned the building, and he or any business venture he'd been in. There was like I don't know, 100,000 of these weird little like toothbrushes or something, that some kind of patented toothbrush thing, and these like little rubber bouncy balls, and then
Jeez.
yeah, and then I don't know if it was a year later or how long after that, but that December of 2012, the guy calls me. He's like, "Do you hear about Western and 21st?" And I'm like, "What? That's where the building was?"
Mm.
Huh? And I was like, "I think I was at my mom's for Christmas." And he's like, "Burnt to the ground."
Yeah,
And
right.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
The whole building, speaking of being old, like there was like some problem with like a gas main or something, and that thing went up in flames, glorious flames, like of all kinds of interesting colors because of all the weird shit that was in there. Yeah.
Oh man, that
Unfortunately, I did not have that stock insured there yet. Moving it
oh.
around, and that would have been fantastic.
That's That's awesome. Um, yeah, so then like you used to be a staple at the old Pittsburgh Comic Con.
Way
I've seen
back.
you at like obviously C2E2, which is like your home show. I've seen you at Baltimore, I've seen you at New York, I've seen you at a bunch of places. You like y- you are one of the original independent studios that really took entrepreneuring to a new height, in my opinion. When we were talking the other day about how you said like I can't remember which year it was, you said like you hit like 40 state or 40 shows in like a year or something like that, which is like every week but holiday weeks, and that's it.
It was yeah, it was sometime around 2014, 2015, and I forget how much time spread out exactly, but I hit 40 cities. So I would do we just really wanted to I wanted to gear up for like major promotion and just getting into the stores with the retailers and um so I just kind of strung together this whole network of all of the cons that would be happening, starting with the ones that were bringing me out and or bringing in artists and stuff, and then I would just meet up there. And then then you just start to connect the dots, like, okay, what cities are along there, what stores are along there, what possible routes could you take, and then you're like going on the Facebook page, like, okay, what's the store look like? Could they even tell anyone about this if they had a signing or anything? And then put signings on the way. So theoretically, I would never have to drive more than like 4 hours to
Mhm.
get to the next stop. And then try to be on the road for, ideally the best scenario was to be able to like do connect two shows. So you do a couple signings on the way, do the show, do a couple signings on the way to the next show, and then
Mhm.
do a couple signings on the way home. That'd be a nice little stretch.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but then it is interesting because you're really the only great day to sign at a store is a Wednesday or Saturday. You
Right.
know, um, so I did a lot of Tuesday signings and weird Monday signings and stuff. And it's like I just looked at it like, you know what, we're setting up. There'll still be flyers up in the store, and people talk about it afterwards, and you can leave stuff for people if there's any like of your readers in their pull boxes that they just know would like the stuff. You can leave stuff for
Mhm.
them. So I think it was really effective. I don't know. I like that kind of stuff. But it's I don't know if I'll ever do it again or not, or if there'd be um but glad I did it, and got to see all kinds of interesting places in the United States of America
I bet.
that I
I think
never
that
would have had any other reason to go to.
was that the year that that like Plume and Scoriers were coming out, because I want to say
Yeah.
I remember you stopping at our Mills store and you had this like giant Devil's Due like light up sign like behind you. We just put it on a couple chairs. Like
Yeah,
it,
yeah, I made that. I made
it
that
was
one by
awesome.
hand. I kept trying to upgrade it after that, and the best one the whole time turned out was the original one I made, which was just like um kind of these marquee lights with the bulbs inside, and
Right.
you know they I think that yeah I got those. I like sourced those cardboard hollow letters and ripped the tops off of them,
Yeah.
and then spray painted all those, and then
Wow.
so they're kind of shiny, they kind of look like metal, and then get those big round bulb lights,
Mm.
put those all through there, and
It was very cabaret looking. I loved it.
yeah,
So
it's fun.
cool. All right. So one of the reasons you're here is we're gonna talk about a little bit about you've relaunched Mercy and now you're relaunching Club Nephilim, right? Did I say that right?
Launching, yeah, it's the first time, yeah, Club
Yeah.
Nephilim.
Nephilim. Yeah. I guess I did not put the right emphasis on the right syllable. Sorry. Um So we're gonna open this up a little bit. We're gonna take a look at the Kickstarter. We're gonna let you talk about it a little bit. Hopefully people get some love from it and give you a little bit of love from it and we can go from there.
Cool, man. Yeah,
So
this is
wow, it's already funded. Look at that.
oh yeah, we got Yeah, we're doing pretty good. We got 20 days to go, and stuff. We actually have another surprise little cover that's going to drop really soon. We got some variants for that. Um, yeah, it's this Club Nephilim is the first real spinoff I've ever done of Mercy of Sparks. So for people who don't know, Mercy Sparks is like that's like my main personal series I created. It's been going on for on it different waves. It's been going on for 15 years. That's about a devil girl that works for heaven hunting down rogue angels. So she sort of does heaven's like dirty work that no one's supposed to realize needs to be done to keep presentations clean. And she can change back and forth from a her devil true form to a human. She's like always in this human glamour. Anyway, that's been going on for a long time. It's uh it's fun and irreverent, lots of action, lots of humor. But then it expands over time into this like much actually you see what's going on behind the scenes. It's this bigger expanded universe of characters and Club Nephilim has been in probably like a third of the issues where it's this sort of supernatural like Illuminati only type of club that exists where it's sort of existent between the realms of the divine. So if you're a there's all these rules in this universe about like a demon, can't go to Earth physically, they can only possess people, but they can get to other planes. And Club Nephilim is where all these things can like coexist. And so but it's like kind of a brothel, kind of a black market, kind of a sometimes it's just a place where you might want to go like research crazy old books with arcane information in them or something. They have libraries and everything. So if you're a member of this club, you can go there. You can uh, study a lost mystic tome from out the Library of Alexandria, or you can, if you got enough money, you can bang an angel. or
It's
um,
like a supernatural speakeasy, is what you're saying.
yeah, yeah. So there's like there's a lot of character. I mean, so that book it's a little darker and it's a little more adult. Uh, and the it deals with I don't want to give too much away about what happens in Mercy, but this is a book for new readers where the people running the club previously have been like dethroned. And now this character's in charge who has appeared in the past. Uh, his focus is mostly on two characters, Ladara, this angel, who was an angel that Mercy had basically had for different reasons had been tricked into helping uh hunt down for heaven. That wasn't exactly what was really, she was sort of duped. And now Ladara like she had lost her halo. A lot of these angels are trapped in Club Nephilim who've lost their halos. So they're like dependent on this sort of like synthetic halo energy that the club's owners had created. And um so there's yeah, that's how they keep a lot of the angels hooked that are down there.
Hmm.
And their power is weaker, so they can be pushed around. So now Ladara is not in that situation anymore. And we thought she was dead, but actually she's back and she's a major part of the story. And this character, Ruth, who's a brand new character, uh, who actually is, little hint, is possessed by this demon, and has she's sort of done something to force this demon to be trapped inside of her. So she's like sort of forced this possession to happen for various reasons. And she's a dancer at the club who was originally sent there to infiltrate it and decided to stay. But it's being written by Pat Shand, sort of working with me on just all the ideas I've had about this and things I want to do to develop more of those little side characters that have appeared in the background in past issues of Mercy Sparks. And we've got three great covers here shown by that's Joel Humberto Herrera, who's done several pieces with us. That's the pulp style painted one.
Hmm.
And then the one in the middle is me with colors by Carlos Moreno. And then the one on the right is this first ever comic book art published is Enerjax, Jackie G. She's yeah, she's amazing. She has these really cool, super, you know, super dynamic, really busy images with like really heavy fashion sort of
Yeah.
accents to everything and a lot of cool details in the background and
Were you
uh,
like, I just want you to draw this like they rated Emma Frost's closet? Like, because
dude,
that's
yeah.
really what it looks like.
I didn't put that together, but yeah, because that yeah, the design on the left is like my sketch based on one of my sketches for Ruth, and then Ladara the Angel, she really did. Well, she so there's a reason why Ladara has covers her neck up. In Mercy, we think she ends up dead, um, and we find out later it's not the case, but she has this scar.
Hmm,
Yeah,
interesting.
no, she put so much thought into that cover. Like, I've never had someone write back so many notes, like thinking about what the vibe of the, club would be in her specific image and thought process behind the characters, what they're thinking, and you know,
I dig it. I dig it a
there's probably
lot,
better. There's
actually.
better pictures down below of the whole thing.
Okay. Uh,
But
oh
anyway,
yeah,
I
there's
just
the
wanted
full
to.
cover.
People don't
That's
realize.
holy crap.
Yeah,
Like, that's a lot.
I
I was
want
gonna
to. I
say
want to
it
just
has a
start to
big
get the books out there and let people realize Mercy Sparks at first glance, it's very accessible. It's very tongue in cheek, kind of fun, like almost like Hellboy meets uh Future meets, I always say meets a little bit of Bad Santa. Kind of funny vibes, but then there's a lot going on, and now starting to release some other series where there's focus on the other characters. Uh
This might be my favorite variant I've
yeah,
seen
I
yet.
just got this idea last week. Like
Oh,
I don't even think it
so
was a
funny.
week ago. I was like, I got to do it. I finally got my Mickey idea. My
The fact that it's called a Cleveland Steamboat, just it drew it, I laughed so hard at that.
the entire
So,
picture is centered around that stupid joke I came up with.
oh, and there's a black and white. Excellent.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Um, there's some work in progress of the interiors by Anna Martello.
Holy crap. That's awesome. That's a big spear.
That's a little flashback montage referencing some of the previous stuff and how Ladara got to where she is.
Well, there's the reason for the neck scar.
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, that might leave a scar. So
I like the
cool.
guy. The guy, there's the bouncer wanding people. It's like he's wanding them, but he's got like a magic scepter.
This guy.
That's his like, yeah. That's like he's like step aside, like woo woo.
It's like he's looking for mortals versus looking for immortals.
Yeah. There
Jeez.
are
Oh, you
mortals there are mortals in there, like if you got the right connections, but also, you know, they're not necessarily responsible for what happens to you in there.
I like this. This was pretty
Yeah.
this one's nice too. So
Yeah, that's Matt Murhoff. So Matt Murhoff was the main artist on all the Mercy Sparks issues, and he doesn't I don't know if he's doing any comic stuff anymore, but yeah, he's fantastic.
I think the rest of this is just
Yeah, it's just all the
stuff. Okay.
costumes and stuff.
All right, we're gonna look at the tiers so we can let people know what they can get. Um, and then we're gonna play the game of Did you make a retailer tier? Which is always my favorite game when we talk about Kickstarters.
I stopped making them because I've never got anyone ordering them.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting. Hmm. All right, well, $6 gets you
but
a digital.
many retailers know how to get a hold of me.
I I
I can
mean,
arrange.
I may or may not be able to hook you up with some kind of retailer tier payment. So, um, I think we just usually like most retailers, we just kind of wait for it to hit previews or something like that. But sometimes books don't, and if we know ahead of time that they're not going to hit that, that's when I usually go to the Kickstarter and I back it. Um, so, um, And if it's like, oh, we get even more cooler shit with it, I'll do that.
And I don't know what
So,
this store schedule is going to be for this one yet, to be honest. So
okay. Oh, I'll pick three. That's kind of cool. I love the have a three-way. Wow.
Aliamore.
Yes.
Have you ever, you know what a key party is? It's so stupid. I just have fun
Isn't
with
that
these.
old? That's an old school Playboy,
So
wasn't it?
that's yeah.
I was
So
It's
so
like a
weirdly,
1970s thing.
yeah. So weirdly, my wife was watching the new version of Wonder Years. Like, did you watch this one? It's like with the
Uh-uh.
black family instead of the white family. And the parents um make friends with the dad makes friends with the kid's music teacher. The music teacher invites him over to his house for a party. And when they get there, they don't realize that it's actually going to be a key party. Um, and like the wife is like picking up on subtleties the whole time, and then at the end, like he's just like, "What the hell? Why did you invite me to this sex party?" Blah blah blah. And he's like, "Well, we didn't know if you were cool enough for it to be the sex party yet, but it's gonna start when you leave." Because somebody somehow they brought up keys, and initially they just needed to move his car, but the wife was like, "This is one of those weird key parties, isn't it?" Like it was really funny. Um, but yeah, so it's basically like everybody throws their keys. All the dudes throw their keys in a hat, and then the wives pick the keys of who they're gonna end up sleeping with, right? Like that's
Yeah,
usually
that's my understanding.
yeah,
I guess it was like big in the 70s.
yeah. Um, I
I
mean,
know. I know Hugh
sure,
Hefner did it back in the day too.
that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah. I mean, what didn't he do? But that's
Right?
beside the point.
Right. So this is a lot of good, cool stuff for like these bundle the pledge tiers.
I try to get it. We've tried to make these simpler now, and then because well, fortunately, it's part of it's the Kickstarter platform. Now the add-ons are easier, so like you
Okay.
can add a whole bunch of other shit, but like you don't have to like put every single thing in the main reward tiers. So
Yeah.
there's but what I did was so I went through and picked like, hey, what are all of the issues of Mercy Sparks that Club Nephilim appeared in? Let's put those. So do we have any of those issues? Like, let's make those available. Let's you know,
The
people catch
metal
up.
covers.
Yeah.
People love metal covers.
Those
It's
are great
awesome.
because you can basically make them to order, so they keep their rarity by default. Just like whoever wants them, then you make like a
Mm,
little bit extra for us, and then that's that.
it's cool.
So yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's a great way to, especially a project like this. I just want to get it going and get it out there, and then eventually it ends up in the stores. And there's a couple. If it does well, there's a couple of other characters. There's this character Wallace that I would love to spin off into a series too, with a more of like a New Orleans magic type of a vibe. He's like this 9 or 10 year old looking little kid who's actually he's actually like 90 something, and he made the mistake of getting in his grandma's like voodoo stuff when he was a kid and summoned a demon, summoned some kind of spirit, and it didn't like it, and it basically cursed him to stay that age forever.
Oh wow.
He's a grumpy old man. He has a bunch of real estate. Uh, and he's like super knowledgeable about magic because he spent his life trying to like, you know, learn how to correct his own situation. And just now, these are like all the characters that just appear, briefly throughout the Mercy series, and it'd be fun to expand on them more.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad it's already funded. I'm looking forward to the book myself when it hits the stores. Um, I will also imagine you will be bringing some with you to Three Rivers Comic Con this year, as you are a guest at the show. So
Yes.
very excited about that. Having you back on the roster. So that announcement kicked out yesterday. So everyone be excited.
Yeah, I got a
So
text from someone. I don't know if they've been announced yet. So he was like, "Oh,
oh
you remembers?"
nice. Um, well, I mean, there's only like a couple people we haven't announced yet. So but anyway, Cool. So let's do your origin story, right? So it's a comic show. We talk about origin stories, like their secret crazy like you didn't like show up in a rocket ship from out of space or anything. But like so how did you when did you first get into comics, and then how did you get into the industry, and then how did you grow your business into what it is now? Because those are like the three main steps that I feel embody you. Now, I will also say, like, you have always been the guy that's been like four steps ahead of everybody. You were the first guy that ever told me about Uber.
Oh,
um,
really?
in Baltimore. Like, I remember being in Baltimore and we were hanging out, and I was like, "Why are you just standing here?" And you're like, "I'm waiting for my Uber." I'm like, "What the fuck is Uber?" Like, you were one of the first guys I ever talked to about Bitcoin. Um, like you just always have had your finger on the pulse. So I
Why am
hope
I
that
not a billionaire?
I was gonna say, like, like sometimes having your finger on the pulse doesn't always make it the best decisions, because you're already that too far ahead sometimes. Um, so I'm curious to see how that plays out in your origin story, if that is just a reoccurring theme throughout the whole
Yeah,
thing.
I'm
So
not always right, but yeah, any success I've ever had, all the successes I have had have all come from something that like everyone else thought was kind of weird or whatever, and
mhm.
then years later it's becomes a bigger thing. And uh so I kind of, it's weird if I don't know. I don't know if everyone's already onto something. I'm like, I feel like I'm doing something wrong if they're all in agreement with everything I'm doing.
Right.
But no, I mean, I got into well, when I was born, I was obsessed with drawing. Like, I can't remember ever not wanting to draw and make stories. Like, I never just really drew pictures. I always had to like make a story with it. So my parents just say I did that when I was like 2, 3. Um,
Crayons on the
they're like,
wall of
yeah,
the
they're like, I just leave
house.
you alone. You draw for like a 3-year-old, sit there for 2 hours and draw. Like, you're like, so they were probably like
Nice.
jackpot. Um,
He's so
but
quiet. Nice.
And then yeah, when I was like 5, I was really obsessed with like I wanted to make like animation. I remember like trying to explain I want to make the cartoons on TV, because when I would say well, I wanted to be a cartoonist, people thought I meant like comics, like the newspaper.
Mhm.
I was when I was really serious about when I was like 9 years old. It was like I want to be an animator. And then by the time I was around 12, uh I had like sent off letters to like Disney studios and stuff. Like, hey, how do
Wow.
you be an animator? And they would write you back. Back then, they would send you like a brochure and everything. Um, but then
That's kind
all
of
I would
cool.
ever do was draw comics. From the time I was like GI, well, my dad always had comics laying around. Like, but he wasn't like a big collector. Like, he just had like a mail subscription to Conan. Yeah, Conan was like his thing he got in the mail. And then he was kind of, he had kind of been into the Thor and the Hulk and stuff as a kid, and that now is that. But it wasn't like he was always creative and into whatever random little creative project at the time, but he was never like, oh, I love comics. But I think that was like a big deal though, because I just was born drawing, and
Hmm.
then it wasn't like a stigma about a comic or something. And then my mom was super creative too, and always trying to, you know, they both encourage that kind of thing. So, and then I would oh, but when I was like young, a tween, all I was doing was drawing comics. Oh, the GI Joe comic came out. That when in I was a little late to it, but I think it was like GI Joe 61 or something like that I got as a kid, um in like a 7-Eleven, because I got into the cartoon, got into the toys, and I was like really excited that the comic was like had real bullets and they actually shot the Cobra guys. It was more violent. Um, and then felt like I was reading something like really adult. And then I just got obsessed with that comic, and that was the first series I read religiously and looked for back issues and stuff. And then the Michael Keaton movie. Well, for the next several years, I just drew comics nonstop. So when I was around 12 or 13, I was like, I don't think I want to do this animation thing. All I do is draw comics. So then I started writing letters to, the comic book companies asking how to how do you get in this business? And then and I don't think I thought of that on my own. I think that probably had to be my parents being like, well, if you want to do it, find out. How. So then Batman movie comes out in 89. I'm like 12, I think, 12 or 13. And then yeah, I would have been 12. And then that is, if you were around at that time, that was like the biggest movie phenomenon ever. And that's when, the first time I ever asked my mom, like, I gotta go to a comic book shop. I've got to go find where all this Batman stuff is. And then when you're 12 years old and you're getting like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight and The Killing Joke. And your parents, they're like, oh, sure, whatever, it's Batman. And then like you're reading this intense stuff. Then I was hooked. And got it. So I that opened the door to the DC universe. Then I had an uncle that gave me like all these back issues he had of Teen Titans by George Perez and Marv Wolfman. And so I was forever like imprinted on the DC universe, or they imprinted on my brain. And I just like never got into Marvel stuff. Um,
Except
because
for
then
G.I.
I was
Joe.
into like then I kind of discovered the had no idea the Ninja Turtles, started as this like awesome violent black and white comic, and I got those first comics like colored reprints of the Turtle collections. And then that sent me down like this indie path where and I was always into the story, and I would read like Walt Disney's biography and other artists like background. I was always a sucker for those kind of stories. So I was always really into like that idea of the person that built something,
Mhm.
while being a creative. And then I think the thing that sealed it forever was like the Image guys all leaving Marvel and um, starting Image Comics and creating their own characters, doing what they wanted, and you know, and that it's funny because at the time they're like rock stars, like literally like our local newspaper in Cincinnati like had the front cover of the whole entertainment section was about Image Comics.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Um, so I just started, what I had done since I was a kid. I was like, would talk to the adults who were doing it. And just like, there was never really any cons around or anything. And I could never, my parents ran into it enough to get like, they hate traveling. They weren't going to drive me to some con in another city. So I had to wait. And there was a couple I got to go to with like actual professionals there and stuff. And, um, asked some like local guys who were distributing through Diamond and self-publishing, how they were doing it. And they're, I mean, when you're, especially when you're a younger like teenager and you're asking these like serious questions, adults, man, they love to help you, you know?
Mhm.
So they just told me how to do it. And and then I just started thinking more about learning how you would publish, but I was really still trying to get picked up by different publishers. So now I'm like 16 or something, sending terrible submissions to all these publishers, all these fly by night like 90s publishers, back in the day when someone would produce anything and be able to sell 20, 30,000 copies.
Oh,
And I
there
got
were
some
so
people.
many, so many.
It's
So,
little do I at the time know, like I'm 16, totally unqualified, sending horrible submissions to like a 21-year-old who's also totally unqualified to be a publisher. Um, and they're like, I got some accepted, and then but like I would never get like a real contract or anything. And um I was I'd like get a contract. I would like try to rewrite the contract if I did get one, and I would show it to like I had a business school elective in high school, show it to my business teacher. Like the closest thing I had to
like a business lawyer.
yeah, yeah. And then um but then so when I was uh that was sort of like I was always, I mean, it was from like day one, always trying to do that kind of stuff, and always like making little odd jobs for myself, like just for
Mhm.
money. Like so when I was 12, I made little flyers and put them around the cul-de-sac and where I lived in Florida, like hey, I'll walk your dog or mow your lawn or whatever, and
Nice.
and then worked at a when I was 14, got a job at this place called Wagon Wheel Flea Market in Pinellas Park, Florida, where we could work as much as we wanted all weekend for like $4 an hour, and they didn't care about child labor laws. They let you work like 11-hour days. So me and one of my other friends were like,
But
made
we need to make sure people understand, like, at that time that was pretty much minimum wage.
and wage is
Like,
4.25.
yeah, yeah, okay.
But
Yeah.
if you were under 16, you weren't supposed to be able to work more than like 4 hours. I think there was the rule,
Yeah.
something like that. And we would work like 11-hour days. Um, and we wanted to like because we're like eighth grade getting like $60 checks like every weekend. Like we were like ballers.
Rolling, man,
Yeah.
rolling.
So and then we would turn around, we would go to the flea market to the comic book booth at the flea market and give all the money to the comic book guy.
Nice.
So and then like as I mean I knew this is what I was gonna do. High school, I was always like, you know, I was always able to be in like the advanced classes and stuff, but I didn't get great grades. I'd get like B's,
Hmm.
roughly somewhere around a B on most
Yeah.
things, or a B minus C on the harder classes. But like stay enough advanced level to get the credits to where like okay, I can go to college. But I just back then, if you went to any art college, like nobody wanted to do comic books, and they would
Hmm.
almost like I had art teachers trying to dissuade me from doing comic books, um and I was like I was afraid to go get a degree at some art school to do like fine art or something because I was like afraid I would be wasting time and uh
Hmm.
have to unlearn a bunch of stuff. Um, so I went to a 2-year commercial arts school. It was like a portfolio school you went to 5 days a week, um, to learn like commercial art and marketing and graphic design and all that. And but in right as high school was ending, I got a publishing deal with like an actual like with this company Hall of Heroes, which at the time was like publishing these like eight other 18-year-olds that were like blown up and they were in like Wizard magazine and all that. And I was gonna have a book with them and called Minotaur. And we this I'm taking a long time to tell the story before we even
It's
get to
okay.
like, being pro.
It's all good.
Uh so like I'm like literally like using my uh I was really, really fortunate to end up going to this school. I left Florida where my dad lived, moved back in with my mom and my stepdad just by circumstance, ended up having this really good high school, like a public high school at Oak Hills that had some really great electives and teachers. Like this graphic design teacher taught us how to assemble our own books. And then they had an old printer there, like we loaded up the ink ourselves, made the plates ourselves in the film room, and it was all before
Wow.
before PDFs and shit. But we had some programs to set up stuff and printed my own ash cans. And so, I mean, I was like, all right, man, I got my ash cans. I'm ready to go. Like, this is going to be hitting. It's going to be announced that we're with this company. I'm going to literally like step right out of high school and be in Wizard Magazine. And, that's it. Um, and then they like, at the last second, we're like, yeah, we're not going to do this book.
Oh.
So, yeah, I've talked to the guy since then, uh, who ran all that. But I was just like, I had all this time the last several years was like learning how people distribute things and how they get it published. And so, well, I'm just going to do it myself. Fuck it. And there was this other guy, Scott Warely, who was like working with me on some of that. And I had a small group of friends that everyone was all trying to get their stuff published. So I just said, I'm just going to do it. So as soon as I could, I got it instead of coming out in 1995 when I graduated. The earliest I could get anything out, I think, was like March of 96.
Okay.
So then, yeah, came out, and that was my first published comic. It's funny because now comparatively, like I think we sold thousands of copies, and you know, uh, I had
Huh.
an ad in Diamond and an ad in, uh, God, there was even Capital was still around then,
Yep.
another distributor, and we got a couple thousand or 2,000 orders from each distributor, and and I was in business, did a 4 issue series there, and did a anthropomorphic kind of comedy thing called Penguin Brothers in '97. And then I started to do this like I was getting better, I started to learn what I was doing, and had then that allowed me to do a bunch of conventions, just driving around shows I could go to. And so Pittsburgh, I exhibited, I think my first Pittsburgh show was '96. Uh,
Wow.
I was really excited because they would get everyone free McDonald's hamburgers. Um,
I remember that they did that every year until the end. It literally happened every year. At some point, I think you had the option of a McChicken though.
so
So,
I try to never get jaded on the cons and stuff, and because always remember dying, like just dying to be able to waiting for the day when I could be able to be at the show to be there Friday. I would always go to these cons that I would always like have to work, and I would never be able to go to the show until Saturday.
oh man.
Um, and then so but that's around, so now we're getting into like the end of the '90s. Um, and so I published Penguin Minotaur, Penguin Brothers, started to get into like self-publishing some other people, but I never actually came out with anything. Put out some friends like hardcore punk album. Like with a
That's
devil
awesome.
somewhere there's a hardcore punk album called Before the Fall with the Devil's Due logo on it. And then well, I was Labyrinth Studios was the first company, and then I changed it to Devil's Due in like '99, 2000. Um, but getting off track.
No, it's cool. I'm actually trying to look for that logo because I'm like, huh,
I'm sure
really?
every guy in the band was probably embarrassed after by now of the songs. I did what was I gonna say? Oh, but that's the thing though, like to anybody who's just starting out like that though, like you just show up and start doing shit. And like, who I met when I was 18 doing my little crappy black and white books? Gene Ha, Guy
Wow.
Davis, Andy Kuhn, Jill Thompson. Like, I mean, all these people were like they were going to these little ballroom shows like in Indianapolis and places inside of like a Sheraton hotel because that's what cons were. I
Hmm.
mean, and then the big con was like mega Mid Ohio Con in Columbus,
Right.
Ohio, which was still in a hotel, like down the halls, the aisles and everything. And John, I mean, people like John Byrne and George Perez and everything were there. That was like the all the pros in the Midwest went there. And so I would do Chicago Con, Mid Ohio Con were like the big ones to me. And and then Pittsburgh was a big one for me. Um, but then meanwhile, you have to make a living. So I got out of that 2 year art school. I went into a place that hired a couple jobs for a minute that like they immediately like laid everybody off or whatever. But then I found this
Right.
place. Oh no, I found this place called Velveteen, which was like doing like licensing. They had licensed like Looney Tunes shirts and Smurf shirts and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's the first time I got like a style guide, of
Mm. Yeah,
when you
yeah.
license a property, here's all
Yep.
the stuff all the rules you got to follow. And
You have
and then
to
like,
use this
Adobe
font.
Illustrator.
You can't use this. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I know how it works.
And then they had just gotten bought by like a $400 million company and merged. So I went from this you could now in hindsight I was like, oh, this was like a cool little mom and pop, very family oriented company that sold cashed out to this bigger corporation, which was not run that way. So it was a weird, and I'm just like I had no idea what was going on with like not understanding like how crazy that must have been for those people. I'm just like the 20-year-old kid that's been hired, like, and they're like, Adobe Illustrator, right? And I'm like, well, I know this other thing called freehand that my teacher insisted on teaching us that no one's ever going to use again. So I would sit there, I had access to the style guides. They were like giving me tutorials to catch up on Adobe Illustrator, and I'm drawing stuff, and so it was I loved it, it was the perfect gig I could have had. It didn't pay shit. I think it still paid like $10 an hour or something, $9 an hour. But um is a far cry from 425. And
Still in
then,
the 90s, man. That's like double. It's almost double minimum wage. It's
yeah,
pretty
no,
good.
that's I moved out when I got that.
Yeah.
I when I had that, I was like able to get my own apartment with a roommate and stuff. So I always remind people my age of that we were able to do that kind of shit when they're bitching about uh any Gen Z people or anything like that. Um, but yeah, so then they laid everybody off. I was there for like 8 months, I think, and then I
Hmm.
bounced around and I found a job at this place called Ripple Junction, um, which was like they had been doing novelty shirts and stuff, and then they were just getting into like licensing.
Hmm.
And so now I've got 2 years, 2.5 years of actually publishing, going to cons, being like a weekend warrior, doing all that. Um, and then getting some write-ups, we got mentioned in some of the magazines and stuff, and I was also building like freelance clients. So then I um I got the Ripple Junction ended up like we basically the short version is they wanted to start doing this 80s retro line, and they were like making it all about sports and stuff, which I didn't know anything about. And I showed him like Cobra and logos and Decepticon logos and Autobots, and like you need to do this 80s stuff, like because this is all me and my friends talk about. Everyone is obsessed with this stuff. We all wish it would come back, and then we want to all see it come back and be more like badass and stuff. And they just didn't get it, and we like argued about it, and then but then they backed me, like they went ahead and you know, did this whole line of shirts, and they couldn't get Hasbro and Mattel and stuff to even do the licenses. Like they didn't want to license
Um,
these things because they were like everybody like a broken record was like, why would you do something from the 80s? Like that's old.
right.
And they wanted to do all their like late 90s, early 2000s kind of stuff. So late 90s stuff. Anyway, that job, I learned everything about licensing. I did learn how to you legitimately get a license. I learned how to go to like these trade shows, like all these apparel trade shows, playing in a way bigger level than the Comic Cons, and how to set up the booths and work with the unions and all that shit. So so when I by the time I was like 21, 22, I had like I knew how to publish books. I knew how to handle licenses. I knew how to like exhibit at a convention and basically run like a company launch that way. And we started this line called Old School, and we got I mean these shirts blew up. They shirts and stickers and all kinds of shit, beanies and hats, and they were in like Hot Topic. There was a store called
Nice.
Gadzooks. Um,
I remember they had Zooks. Yeah.
yeah, and they were like they had a deal with me where I started getting paid. I think I was making like $15 an hour once I really like provided this value for them. And then they were like, I had a deal where I was getting like a 10% royalty or something on profits or something that they made, however much their business had grown or
Nice.
something like that. I just remember in my head, I think it was going to be something like 40 grand that I was going to get because they made so much money. And,
Wow.
um, and then, we were in New York at the Javits Center for a apparel show. And I doodled the Devil's Due logo at that show when I was bored sitting at the booth, just trying to think of like a cool idea for like um a line of I don't know, like could be streetwear, could be a studio name, could be a comic book company, could be anything. And they got the cease and desist letter, and they got a phone call and we got a phone call from their secretary back at their office that Hasbro had like laid down like cease and desist, um and
Oof.
then they basically like had to put the kibosh on everything, like all that. So, but in that time, so I didn't get that cash.
No,
And
bummer.
they had done Grateful Dead licenses, and I guess some of the way a lot of that stuff went is if you got caught, they would work with you like, hey man, look, you got to pay back royalties, and we'll do out a deal
Okay.
with you, but we got to you got to do the story way. And like they had never done anything like this where one of these bigger corporations was just gonna be like, no, we're not all groovy, man. So they had to pay a bunch of money in like back
Oh,
royalties, and they had to like scale down, and they uh, but we got the Voltron license legitimately, or they were able to get that, and we because I had been at a con and met Peter Laird, I had a phone number to call, and I got a Mirage Comics license for Ninja Turtles, which ended up being
wow.
huge for them later. Um, and they some other stuff too. So I was a super cool job, but I was so obsessed with wanting to make comics, and I was just like miserable at that job every day. And I had built up enough freelance that I felt like, I think I'm gonna make the jump and just do freelance so I can focus on making my comics more and just keep going to the cons and slowly grow until I
Hmm.
can stop the freelance and just do the comics. Um, and then the so but I knew knowing what I knew about the licensing, I went ahead and said I wanted to take I was gonna went and take a chance on saying, you know what, I want to do some of this 80s shit. Like I've just seen it. Everything that I thought would happen was right. Everybody wants this stuff. And still no one's doing it in comics. Meanwhile, um, like, Wizard Magazine is doing stuff in every month. They have J. Scott Campbell draw these crazy mashups of Thundercats and He-Man and G.I. Joe and
Yep.
Transformers and all that. So yeah, most people know this story or they can dig it up elsewhere, but got the I pitched for the G.I. Joe license. And literally I sent them the comics I'd been publishing, but I wrote up a proposal. I sent sample art of what we would do, and they wrote back, and then they set up a uh yeah, they offered me a deal over the course of, like, this is over several weeks, but and they offered a ridiculous, like, absurd royalty payment for me to make, and I said yes. And just we got the deal, and then I instead of self-publishing, I was able to set up a deal with Image Comics, with Image Central and this was to secure the GI Joe license. So
Hmm.
they got um we got that in. I think there was some resistance to Image too, but like somebody, I don't know what internal battle was fought there, but somebody said we're doing it, and then we yeah, and it was like their number one book. It was the hit. Sold like over 150,000 copies of the first issue, all said and done, and um
That's awesome.
that's that. So then I was all of a sudden officially, by the time when that came out, I was officially in comic books full time.
Nice.
And then everyone was like, "Who the fuck's this kid that came out of nowhere?"
How come he's drawing G.I. Joe?
Kid
What or writing G.I. Joe?
got
What the
into
fuck?
comics yesterday, and all of a sudden, it's like
It's all good. It's all
six-year
good,
overnight
man.
success story.
That's awesome. Uh, I I think I knew most, or at least most of the tail end of that story. I think I knew. I think you had told me about like that last part where like they got hit with the royalties and then you just were like, fucking, I'm going on my own. Like I think you told me that a little bit of that before at some point, but it's just really good to hear. It's really cool to hear that, your gut was so right on what it needed to be and you proved it right in one different industry completely and then just shifted and boom, and that was your gateway into to
Yeah.
bigger self-publishing, we'll call it that.
Yeah.
So
I guess the difference that there versus some other times when I'll feel like I see a trend or something was that I just felt like I'm not guessing here, guys. This is fact. Like, and if you don't agree with this, you're wrong. Like, this is just people want this.
right,
And so you're so committed to that idea that,
right. Well, it's
oh,
like right now with like all the comic stores that are not starting to stock manga. Like
oh my God, yeah.
dude, do you like money? Like like come
Yeah.
on, man. Um so it's very, very interesting.
I was
So
talking to Todd today. I just mentioned, I was like, I think you got to start seeing, like, dealing with all of this back stock. You got to
mhm.
start seeing people now who are really like in their, early 30s, late 20s, getting into like, hey man, you got this 20-year-old copy of whatever Berserk or Dragon Ball or something. But that's got to
Yep.
start to
Yep.
real.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it is. So, I'll
We
be
get
right back,
asked
guys.
for it by the
J
stores all the time. So,
Justin, you're in charge. I'll be right back.
oh. Well, I was gonna say it, talking about all the like as somebody who grew up, we're probably around the same age, I believe. Um, so, I'm a He-Man fanatic. I was just telling John, I just binge watched the Kevin Smith Netflix because it came out just today, and I
Oh,
binged
oh,
that.
it dropped today.
Yeah, it dropped today. I binged all 5 episodes, and it was like it was super sweet. I was like, why didn't they do this in 2000? I'm like, this seems obvious stuff, but it was, but then you always hear the old school guys are like, oh, this ain't my He-Man, blah blah blah, and I'm like, appreciate for what you got. I was like, this is way better than the stuff we watched when we were kids, where the animation cells were crap. You had the same scenes done slightly different angle, or hey, we added a tree to it, and that was how different it was as compared to now, where you're getting everything and anything, like different action scenes, the whole 9 yards. And I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
okay,
He-Man cracks me up the most, I think, because if there is no bigger example of like it's better in your memory.
oh
When
yeah, yeah,
when you go watch those cartoons, man, they are rough.
oh
But
yeah,
but the people that get it, that embrace it, some, friends with Tim Seeley, who now is like, I think at this point, Mattel pretty much goes to him and asks if like this sounds like a cool thing for all their He-Man stuff because he's knows so much about He-Man and he works with them a lot. But they're like, that's someone who like embraces the absurdity of it, you
hmm
know, but just goes all in on it. And I think Kevin Smith really understood what
yeah,
to just like, don't try to dance around it and come up with some reason why a character looks this way or that way. Just it is what it is, man, and just own it.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I mean, I look at it this way: is you're seeing in pop culture, like in general, of was it the again Netflix reference here is the toys that made us docu series stuff. Every toy line is you got the creators going, oh, this is how we started with this. Like the guys from He-Man, every one of those creators totally off the rocker, like totally
yeah.
nutso. But they're like, but this is where these characters came from, and this is how we did it. And now it's here they are, they're retirement age, and they're like, yeah, we still get people coming up to us going, yeah, thank you for my childhood. And now I'm teaching my kid their, He-Man, the next generation, or I guess what the better thing would be Ninja Turtles, where Ninja Turtles is now not just our generation, but it's 2000, 2010s into the
Oh yeah,
current,
there's like
you know,
five
or
generations of Ninja Turtles
yeah,
fans.
There's like different categories as to because you've got the groups that make they made the toy that was like a big hit and then they never quite were sure how to reboot it. Or they successfully rebooted it many years later. They got stuff like Ninja Turtles and like Power Rangers and things like that that they just never once they hit, they never went away and they just kept reinventing themselves constantly. So like they might have less popular reinventions, but I mean, it's kind of fascinating how and impressive how something like Ninja Turtles just stayed alive, and now it's 40 years later, no, or however long. No, not that long, but having it's really having its resurgence now, like with Kevin Eastman back with like, Ronan
Yep.
and
mm,
all that. Uh and then I think
Now like Jason Aaron's taken over and it's like all hyped up again and
I'm genuinely shocked at how the 80s retro stuff now, this literally this week, this year, like is so popular. Because it's funny when G.I. Joe was the first, when I got that license, that was the first 80s retro comic cartoon thing, period, like to come out before Transformers, before Dreamwave got the license for Transformers or anything. And so everyone, like it was the same thing. The retailers were not expecting it to do as well as it did, and it was like this complete shock hit to everyone. But it was super painfully obvious to anyone who was like wanting it to come out. And everybody, because they didn't know who we were or who I was, it's like so many people roll their eyes, at this 80s thing. And I, the whole time, am thinking, like, yeah, no shit. I've been trying to make comics my whole life. I do genuinely really want to do this. I fucking love this, and I can't believe I get to bring it back. Um, but yeah, I don't know how long this 80s fad is gonna last. I hope this propels me enough so that we can do all of our other stuff. And
Hmm.
and the irony is, like, no, actually, the 80s stuff never went away. And now it's even more, it's not hitting the numbers, even the new Joe stuff and everything's not hitting the numbers that we did back then, but um
But it's definitely better than what it was toward the
yeah,
end of the IDW era,
yeah,
which, yeah.
it's close to like, and it's been, you need things to sort of like be in a lull for a while before you can do a relaunch, before you can
Hmm.
have excitement. And
Yeah.
it's interesting now too, because I like that when we did it, and when you were launching that in like the year 2000, 2001, you know, it was all about, we had all these ideas about what these things could be when we were kids and as we got older, but it was always toned down.
Hmm.
So once we're finally adults, we're like, now we can bring it back and can be like badass. The art can be more like modern, and we can be more, a
Well,
little more violent and more,
I
more serious. It could be as what it is in your memory, what you wanted to always see them do that they couldn't get away with.
well, around that
Oh,
time when you guys were bringing back GI Joe, and even Voltron, a little later, um, like that's when there was that resurgence of like there was a new GI Joe cartoon with like the newer cartooning style. There was the redo of He-Man, um, that was basically the same first season of He-Man with just way cooler looking art, and that was the one that paired with the Image stuff. And it was almost like Image went, okay, we're gonna partner with Josh. We're gonna get this GI Joe thing going. It's going well. All right, now let's buy He-Man. Let's get all this other stuff, and then it just the train kept rolling, and it was like almost the first wave of that resurgence. And you were right on the cusp, man. You were like right ground zero, pushing it up, and I think there's a lot of people that have you to thank for that because I don't think if you would have done that, that it would have been as it wouldn't have hit as hard with everybody. And now people are like they're hunting down your issues of GI Joe
it
because they're
is.
so hard to find.
It's kind of staggering how many people don't know about any of that stuff. I'm learning. I'm just learning this. I just assume it was such a big deal when it was out. Like
Hmm.
if you're in comics, I just kind of thought people knew about it. But if you uh IDW had it for so long, they had it for like 13 years.
Yeah.
And even though that whole almost decade that I was running it, um was all ended right as like social media took off. And right as all of the magazines were started like just going all digital, and so much of like evidence of the hype machine and how
Hmm.
popular it was, there's no record of that. Um, so then when you see like 12, 13, 14 years of IDW shit, it's like yeah, that's makes sense that people are like, they think that like, oh yeah, that was like this thing that was there was like a few of those issues, right? Those Devil's Due issues, and they realize like, oh shit. They start collecting, they realize like, oh my God, how many of these are there, because I think we did as many as Marvel did in 12 years, and we did it in 7 years. If you add up all the issues and volumes and stuff. But the
Right. Right.
but now, and comic shops were in a different position at the time too. Like the market was way different. Um Marvel was still figuring out what it was doing, coming out of bankruptcy, letting like Quesada and Palmiotti mess around with different ideas. And oh no, by then Gemis and Quesada were like in charge and just doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And the Ultimates had just started. So that G.I. Joe and that 80s launch brought a lot of people back into stores who,
Hmm.
you know, like saw on the news or something that G.I. Joe was back, or, some other 80s thing was back. And then they would come in, and then they realized all the other fun stuff that was starting to happen in comic shops again. And then they got back into it. So I don't think that whole era gets enough credit for that phenomenon, gets enough credit for bringing people back to comic shops period. But now it's interesting now because I like if I was relaunching that stuff now, I wouldn't do anything like what I did before. Like because the way I relaunched it then made sense for the time. Now you don't have to be so serious. You can go and you can get a little more into like the weirder stuff, and people will embrace some of the goofier stuff more too, a little bit, and you can a lot of the stuff's come full circle now. So I think what Skybound's doing with with some of the GI Joe stuff with Cobra Law or whatever. I think that's we could have never if we did that back then, we would have been like eviscerated by fans. Like how you know, but like it makes sense.
Oh yeah, because like the Cobra Commander book, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
stuff like that,
So
and just like the uh, but yeah, I mean, I can't believe yeah, Thundercats, Gargoyles, all this stuff.
yeah,
It's like kicking ass. So
right. Yeah, Thundercats comes out in like next week after that or something. Like it's very close. Actually, I just got I was just shown the Maria Wolf variant for Thundercats 1, and it's like an homage to X-Men 201. I think
oh cool.
201, 202, like where it's like Lion-O scratching the front of the thing. It's really cool.
Oh, that's a clever idea. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. She's like been blowing up and stuff. So, but but and it's weird because she's younger than us. She's like 10 years younger than me, at least. So
And
she's like
she
probably close to 15 years younger than you because I think you're 4 years older than me.
I was telling you
So,
like I telling you she did that like just promotional art for us for part of one of our tours in like
yeah.
2017. And she had some pieces popping up in like, like kind of like our little local hipster art gallery scene in Chicago. And that's how I saw her stuff because it was like, oh, what's this like looks like total like heavy metal kind of vibes.
Hmm.
And yeah, and that's the sign of the times and how more diverse the changes are becoming in the taste of like the bigger companies. Like I loved your stuff. I never thought I would see it on like all these Marvel books.
Right.
And you
Or
wouldn't
Dan
have.
Warren Johnson, who has a similar style, doing a whole Marvel run of books. Like, 'cause he did that whole Beta Ray Bill run, and then
Oh, I yeah.
he's done variants. Now he's doing Transformers, like, and he's even cranking it up to another level because he's mixing in like wrestling and stuff, like where the like where Optimus Prime like suplexes freaking um Starscream at the end of the first issue, and you're just like, what? And it's
And,
it's crazy.
and like
So
I think had that art style been in the books back when Dreamwave was obsessively have like Don Figueroa style, like crazy, super detailed like
yeah.
perspective on all the robots and everything. If you had put that style of like loose kind of gestural art in there, people would have been like, "What is this?" You know. So it's nice that now we're like can appreciate different styles, and it's kind of funny now that super tight detailed stuff is kind of dated, and then that'll come
Mhm.
back around once people see like the more expressive kind of like looser style Transformers. I
Right.
think then they'll like dig in to these old like crazy hyper detailed rendered drawings.
Well,
um
I think I think that there is a medium ground in that style that's kind of coming up more popular now, like that heavy metal style, because like there is a lot of detail to it, but it's like an unpolished version, right? So it's almost like and I'm gonna go into music because that's what I do. So it's like listening to Rush, right? Because they were like the first real like Rush or Yes, like they're like the first real prog bands, right? But they're not but they started something that's nowhere near as crazy detailed as what it is now, right? So like, but if you listen to Rush and then you compared to like Dream Theater is like insane. Like they'd be like the like the uh J. Scott Campbell's, right? Like they're like the super detail. And then you have bands like Smashing Pumpkins or Foo Fighters who have like you can hear that influence, but but they're also influenced by the stuff that makes them a little more sloppy, that makes it just right in that pocket for what people want right now. Because like, and it's gonna come back. Like the '90s super Jim Lee, um, like super pristine, lots of detail guys. Those guys are gonna come back, and I mean they never really went away, but that kind of style is going to come back. But I think we had it for so long, and it kind of morphed into that cheesecake beefcake thing that I think a lot of people got kind of sick of it.
Yeah.
And then it became to the point where it's like, oh, that's great for covers, but you guys can't do interiors because it's too detailed. So, um, when you think about like Jack Kirby, like I heard a great story from Jim Steranko about Jack Kirby when he was inking Kirby, and he said Kirby would only ink the parts that were super detailed that he wanted specifically done. Everything else was like line, like not even a real sketch. It was like here's kind of where his hand will be, here's kind of where his foot will be. You can figure it out. But his belt would be like pristinely drawn already, and it's like
That's how you draw
okay,
5 pages a day.
right,
You make the inker do it.
right. And
Yeah, like
that's kind of how
I
I thought
mean,
about that. So
I
There's a
can't.
reason why they called him the king. He knew what he
Yeah,
was doing.
I
we had to smoke a cigar between every page. It'd be fine.
I
So
kind of wonder how the like. Well, first off, like I think on a macro level, the market's just going to change so drastically. I don't know if these conversations of like one dominant style are going to even be a thing. There's going to be so many
yeah,
different niches, just like music. You know,
yeah,
look at music pre Napster, and then and then
yeah.
iTunes, and
Pretty
then
Napster.
streaming. Like so,
Yeah.
um, like, but I do currently wonder where all the hype around a lot of this stuff is. Seems like I'm like I can't believe that like this multi like double cycled retro stuff is doing so well right now, and it's like, is that just because is it the same people? Is it like is it now like 40 to 50-year-olds that are buying it all, or like, or are they, is it they actually didn't get tired of it, and they just got even more money than they had when they were in their 20s, so now they're just buying more of it, and they're probably can they buy it when they're 65, and
Yeah.
you know, or is it a bunch of younger people coming in helping buy it too? Because I wouldn't expect that as much, like, and I don't see that good much because I'm not in the stores the stores every day.
I can tell you from what I observe, usually it is, I will say the main guys who come in and buy new wall books are majority 35 to 55. Um, Secondly, by like young kids. Like they're buying like the Saturday morning cartoon version Ninja Turtle book or the Sonic the Hedgehogs, right? Like the up to 18, up I wouldn't even say 18, up to like 15. But like that 15 to 35 is they're buying manga or graphic novels. Like they're not buying they want they want it collected, they want it finished, they want a whole story, they want the whole thing. They don't want to have to wait. It's very it's very much so like when people give the stereotypes of the generations, it is very much so that generation. Like they don't want to wait, they want the whole thing, they want the bang for their buck. They don't want to pay full price for it, they wait for it to go to discount. Like or they buy it on Amazon or they buy it on eBay. Um but
But
the
then
younger guys, the newer generation that's coming in, they're a lot like the older generation. So it's almost like um it's almost generationally like we were talking about Ninja Turtles. Like you had like this generation, then there's the generation where that guy didn't have a kid yet, and then there's the generation where that guy has kids, so his kids are growing up with it, and then they do it. So it's like every other generation is feeding the flames, and I think it's I think we're coming out of a lull for comics. I think the pandemic I think helped those guys fill in all their spaces, all their slots because they were like free money from the government. fuck yeah. So they all went and dug in our basement and they dug in our warehouse and they filled all those holes. And now they're like, well, no, I don't know what I need. So now all these younger kids are coming in and filling in that, like they're starting to pick up that torch. So
That's what, oh my God. I think like all the anybody in our business who does not
mhm.
want college student debt forgiveness, I'm like, you shut your whore mouth right
Right?
now. Can you
Oh
imagine
my God. Right?
how much our industry would explode?
Right? How much,
And
how many, most industries would explode,
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that get I yeah,
right?
you know,
Like,
bigger, yeah.
why they don't want these 20 somethings to not have money blows my fucking mind. I'm like,
Yeah.
you guys are stupid. Like,
Ignorance is bliss, man. They're
right?
like, or it's the, well, I did it. That means you got to do it. No, no.
It's like you
Yeah, you
realize
know
that
what
someone
else?
else has the money,
Our
right? You realize it's like a
grandparent, I was
you
gonna say,
realize it's
our
a banker.
grandparents were around before there was a 40-hour work week and they got paid 8 cents an hour. You know what they did? They worked 20 hours a day. You want to do that because that's what they did? I don't think so. Come on.
Well, we we'd like to have our prices of all our houses and our cars the way our parents got back in the day. That's for sure. I'll take that.
Oh yeah.
I'll take a brand new car for 20 grand. Period.
Well, they were talking about how like 40 grand in like 1985 is now would be the equivalent of like $180,000 right now.
Yeah. Yeah, when they
So
adjust all that stuff for inflation, they show like
yeah.
basically like minimum wage should be something like 37.50 an hour or something like
Yeah.
that right now in order to be equivalent to what it was in like 1990.
Yeah.
Like
Like
if it kept pace.
before it went like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Not
Yeah,
to get
before it
too far off
spiked.
on a tangent, I really love this theory. Like there's all this fight against like people who are like more libertarian against fiat currency and money printing and all that. And like um I think you can have that and it's okay, but I think it
Hmm.
should be tied. I think the minimum wage or the median, some kind of check and balance of the median salary or whatever has to be tied to the currency supply. And that solves all the problems.
I
So then the
agree.
government can still print money to get itself out of messes. It can do all kinds of stuff. But like, you know, you don't have to be on the gold standard if like, hey, if they want to print more money, well, then they have to raise the minimum wage
Yeah.
that keeps it from being. But yeah,
Yeah.
otherwise, these debts that all these kids have, it's not, and fucking grown ass people have. It's not like
Yeah.
some like hardworking person's got it. It's in some banker's hands. Like the
Right.
banks have it. Like, oh no, don't take their money
Right.
away.
Like I was talking to like I'm still tied in with my fraternity guys and I was talking to some of these guys that just graduated. So there's a 20 almost a 20-year gap between when I graduated and when they graduated. And their debt is like 5 times what I paid. For 5 years, they're doing 4 years at 5 times that at the same style university. And I'm just like, where the hell do you think you're going to get a job that pays for that? Like, thank God for that government check that helped me pay off that last bit of mine. But
Yeah,
holy crap.
yeah.
Like,
But I,
oh,
I, I just think if you are in just only like half joking, but like if you're in anything entertainment or you sell anything useless in collectibles, after seeing the effects of a little $600
hmm
stimulus payments or whatever they were, a little whatever
hmm
like
hmm
seeing how much our industry it fucking doubled. Like
hmm
comic sales went from 1 billion to over $2 billion in 1 year
Yep.
after a steady progression of like incrementally going up for like 20 years. And then it doubled and it hasn't dipped back down by half. It dipped down that after the pandemic, but it's still on the
Oh
trajectory.
yeah, I don't even think
And
it's not 20% down, but it's probably like around 10 from
so
where it was. But
when you
yeah,
talk about like kind of
right.
like where things are going and trying to look ahead and all that, I look at like a repetition of this pattern that happened about a decade ago is happening, going to happen again on even like if it's a fractal, like
hmm
the first little fractal circles like this, and then
hmm
now we're about to hit this.
hmm
That's like we were locked in that comic book boys club forever. And then in manga comes out in like 04, 05, you start to see like all of a sudden girls are reading comic books.
Mm-hmm.
All reading manga. And they're sitting in the aisles at Barnes and Noble and Border when there was one on every block.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like flipping through manga. Suddenly, and I'm dead serious about this. 13, 14-year-old boys who wanted to start dating girls didn't have to stop reading comic books. That's what
Yep.
guys used to feel like they had to
Mhm.
do if they were a comic nerd and they wanted to start getting girlfriends. They got rid of their fucking comic books. So all of a sudden there was this other out. We're like, oh, I could just now these girls that are what that was sounds like I'm kidding, but that was a cultural shift. And
Mm-hmm.
anyway,
I
as
mean,
I
I mean, you can even look at like our company. Like that's around when we, I think, doubled the amount of stores we had, right? Because I think
yeah
we were at two till about that, and then right around that time, that's when we bought Butler in 2000, and then we had Century 3, and then um what is Pittsburgh Comics now was one of us for a while, and then when Colin uh whatever Colin and Todd's deal was, and that he turned into Pittsburgh Comics, we opened the mills. It was just like, and now it's just that we opened Ohio. Like it was progressively growing like that, and it was. I think you're right. I think we're gonna see that. I think we're gonna see another bigger boom in probably like 3 years. I'm calling it.
yeah I
So.
agree with you. And that kind of gets into what I'm talking about too, like the uh, side note, I would love to see some podcasts get more retailers involved. Like so many retailers are struggling and they talk about struggling. I want to get groups of these retailers like Todd and like all these guys with like multiple chains that just keep growing and opening stores, or they just seem to they do it something differently. And like I want to hear those retailers talk about what is like going well. Anyway, side note. But yeah, like so let's say like, oh, 05, so manga is starting to take off thanks to like Tokyo Pop bringing a lot of it over
Mhm.
and all that. And then you've got so you start all of a sudden seeing like there's all these like teenage girls showing up at cons. And I remember thinking like, oh, it's cool. Like another 10 years, we're gonna actually have like an adult like female male ratio of like
Mhm.
readership and I think what I didn't like in hindsight's 2020 was really obvious after that. Like, oh well, with manga comes the cosplay. With manga, cosplay was a manga thing. That was only in
Mhm.
anime shows. Costumes before cosplay anime influence was like a dude dressed as Aquaman just shopping. And like
Right.
if
Or
like no
Superman,
one acted
like
in
like a
character,
semi easy thing to do. Yeah.
yeah. And then um but like if anyway, so cosplay comes in and then the Comic Con explosion, I didn't really see how fast that would happen, how big the cons would grow. All of this, like between 2005, 2015, all that stuff happened. And then Comic Cons became like literally like a 50-50 male female ratio. But I'd always heard and seen data that like women read more than men. So if comics ever get mainstream acceptance, actually more women will read comics than men. And so then uh but yeah, then so what happens? 2015 rolls around, and it's like, yeah, we've got not only the readers, but what I had kind of was waiting for was now all these creators have come in. So
Mhm.
that's when you saw that image boom. You saw all this crazy explosion of all these diverse new stories and genres and everything. That was in part due to a lot of new readers who got into it through manga, and then I wouldn't say they aged out of manga. They just sort of got tired of reading the same kind of style of stuff and then wanted to read other stuff, and they didn't go the superhero route. So we got that big explosion in like 2016, 17, 18, back when like people all of a sudden were coming in like, I got to get the first issue of every Image book again, and Image could put out all kinds of crazy shit and it would different ideas, and they were selling uh I'm glazing over a bunch of stuff like the Walking Dead phenomenon and all that, but
Oh yeah. Well, no, I mean you're hitting right where you need to though, because
yeah,
like it. the thing I find funny though is like, so we start getting all these female readers and writers and people in the industry, and then what do we do? The the boys club, the old boys club guys come out and they bitch about it and they try to ruin it. And I'm just like, guys, like, and they do now they're doing it with the movie stuff. Like, like I had two old employees call me and we had conversations about why The Marvels was a great movie and people need to shut the hell up. And I'm like, right? I'm like,
It's
people
like you're
just
not allowed. I didn't see the movie, but it's like some of the attitude to me is like they're mad if every single Marvel movie is not for them. Like, guys, it's bigger than you now. It's different types of movies,
Mhm.
right,
Yeah.
like,
right.
um,
Well, I guarantee you won't be hearing about that in Deadpool 3, you know,
oh no.
because everybody, all the gatekeepers love Deadpool. So,
Yeah.
or at least Hugh
I
Jackman's
really
version
wait.
of
Whoa,
Wolverine.
whoa, whoa, whoa!
One of
If we
either.
get if we get Lady Deadpool in this, it's gonna like they're gonna lose their shit. They're gonna complain and cry, and it's gonna be hilarious. And we're just gonna be like, apparently you still don't read the comics, dumbass.
Is she gonna have like that crazy 90s like ponytail that goes like
Yeah.
um oh, but what so now what happened then? Manga kind of like manga like really dove off a cliff in
Hmm.
sales for many years. And then now it's coming back. So by like 2019, manga is like 37-40% of the industry again. Um, and then uh, but what do we have now? As of up by 2019, something like 40 some odd 50% of all graphic novel sales were for kids.
Hmm.
So Dog Pants or Dog Man, Captain Underpants, Rena Tugmire stuff. I mean, all these books.
Max Meow. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
We didn't have that in '05. Like we
Right.
didn't like and the numbers that they're selling are like millions of copies, just millions. And so now it's like it's hard to find a kid that didn't have comic books in their house in
Hmm.
America starting at that
Mhm.
age. So and now I was like, well, what's gonna happen by like right about now, like they're gonna when you're like 9, you're aging very quickly. So a couple years they're into like, manga and stuff, and they're gonna all you're gonna see manga just fucking explode. Um, but there's already so many kids in manga in like 2019, 2020. Like they're gonna be getting into all the when weird comic stuff,
Yeah.
and they're gonna like kind of age up and want new to have a broader taste and not just want to read manga. So, and then we're about to see, we last time we saw hundreds of new creators come in. We're gonna probably see another like, like 1,000 creators come in, all influenced who grew up starting with reading Captain Underpants and then, reading
Hmm.
and Dogman and then reading manga and then so by like, I mean, I think by well before 2030, we've
Yeah.
got huge population of people in like late teens and mid 20s who are, I mean, such a larger swath of people, and they all read comics. Um, what will so that anyone who feels doom and gloom for the medium itself is not paying any attention to like to that trend. Um,
Right.
the the nice orderly way that it's been done up until now might crumble, it might completely evolve into something else you don't recognize anymore. And that's what people will be sad about and complaining about or whatever.
Right.
Um, yeah, but that's um, I think we're going to see a massive explosion in comic book content and new creators and all kinds of stuff in the next few years. So I look at it more like, well, just more and more it's going to be about focus on your niche and like what people like about your stuff.
Hmm.
And you kind of have to put faith that there's going to be people out there
Yeah.
receptive to it, and just listen to your audience more. But if you think you're going to dominate the market or something, it's like no, like it's going to be more splintered like music. But there's going
Yeah.
to be more than ever before. There's going to be more shit than ever before. There's gonna be more amazing stuff than ever before.
Right.
There's
And
weird
and
AI
as
comics that are garbage too.
oh God, don't even get me started on that. Um, but I mean, yeah, I mean, you can look at music too and go, in the '90s, we had like this resurgence of like punk, and then a new version of rock, which was grunge, and then in the 2000s, it was we're just gonna go to boy bands, and then it was, hey, we're gonna have this next new like kind of like math rocky, like guys like borderline prog rock, like Coheed Cambria and like Motion City Soundtrack and bands like that. And you're gonna have that kind of a thing, and then it's gonna be like, oh, now it's all those dudes that were big in like the 80s and 90s are now huge again because now they can do reunion tours or reunion shows. So we're seeing like Green Day's doing Dookie and American Idiot in its entirety next year because they're 30 and 10 years old respectively. Like, and then there's people like, oh man, I'm gonna go. Hey son, do you want to go too? And it's
Yeah.
the generational thing is starting to happen there again. So, and I think the same thing's is going to happen with comics. I think the bigger boom was like the first three phases of Marvel, and I think when four hit, even though the pandemic probably helped make this divide a more little more like forced stop. I think that was coming, but because there's no way they could have kept that trajectory and that momentum. Because you've used most of your really big characters, right? You now have to go to, all right, who's on the B team? Let's do the B team now. And there was no way it was going to keep that bigger momentum. So, people that are like, oh, it's superhero fatigue. I'm like, not really. It's just now we're getting into like the more like, hopefully you spent that time getting to know those characters and getting to all those side characters, so now you can read or you can watch a side character movie. Like, it's not like all the mainstream again, or the top tier anymore. And I think that um I don't think it's ever going to go away. I don't think it's going to be like, I don't think we're going to get like the shitty Dolph Lundgren Punisher movie anymore. Like,
I
I think
know.
it's still going to be
So
better.
people, it's like, man, we're so spoiled now. Like people forget that that's the stuff you had to,
I
Yeah.
bought that on DVD not too long ago, by the way.
be funny if you watched and you're like, actually, it was incredible.
Next time you come to town, I'll bring it and we'll watch it. Like, it'll be ridiculous.
Um,
Set up a
so
TV at the con, and everybody just watches the Dolph Lundgren
Now
Punisher movie in the
we'll
middle
just
of
take over Todd's basement and make him bartend while we watch the Dolph Lundgren movie. I mean, he's got like the sprayed on 5 o'clock shadow. Like, it's awesome. It is so bad. So
It's still not as
it's so
bad as
bad that
his
it's good.
portrayal of He-Man. Still not as bad as his portrayal of
Yeah,
He-Man.
that's pretty bad.
It's so bad.
But Gwildor was so good. He was such a great Orko.
The best part of that whole movie was Skeletor. Again,
Right.
Skeletor is
You're
what
you're
carried
not wrong.
Masters of the Universe.
Fair enough.
there's
So,
that. I
all
love.
right.
There's some cool designs in that movie.
All right. So you can find all of Josh's stuff at devilsdude.net, right?
Yep. Or
Cool.
devilsstudios.com.
Cool. And where can they find you if they look for you on a social media?
I'm on Facebook at Blaylock Comics, Instagram Blaylock Comics, and Twitter Josh Blaylock.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you again so much for coming on and hanging out with us, Josh. Like, it's always great to hang out with you and hear stories. Um, we went over a little bit of time, but that's fine because it was a good time. And hopefully somebody learned something today. So,
I have to go.
I did.
Todd, I'm Todd's excuse to drink, so I've got to go.
oh, okay. All
I
right.
gotta go do.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you next week. Make sure you check out threeriverscomiccon.com to check out all the artists and vendors that are coming out. Get your tickets now before Free Comic Book Day, because then the prices go up just a little bit. And we'll see you guys in June for that. And remember to shop your local comic shop. Doesn't have to be us, but it does need to be somebody. Keep us employed, keep you happy. We're gonna keep getting you stuff that will always give you a little bit of escapism, and you will have some fun. I promise you. At least if whoever's working at the shop is worth half a damn, they will help you out, and it'll be good. So, and order and make sure you guys put in pre-orders for Club Niflheim, and we'll be good to go. So, all right.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Bye.